Well, hey, everybody. I'm so excited to be sitting down today with a new friend, someone I've just recently been introduced to, Clayton Bullion. Clayton, what's your title there in Texas? Because it's this
Yes,
long.
that it is. I don't have business cards. I have business poster boards. I am the Evangelism, Discipleship, and Multiplication Catalyst for Texas BSM. So EDM Catalyst for short. But what that means is I work primarily with our internship program through BSM at Texas. We've got about 60 interns on 40 campuses. I do our new staff development. But then I also get part of the multiplication piece. I get to work with a lot of our strategic partners around the nation, the Campus Multiplication Network, every campus, and just anywhere that they're trying to plant and do ministry. I get to they've let me be a part of that. So I love my job.
That is fantastic. It really sounds like when it comes to like how Baptists are reaching colleges and college students in Texas, you get to do a little bit of everything. That sounds really exciting.
Yes,
and
they've been kind.
Yeah,
they've been kind to me.
You said BSM, and some people here in Georgia or in other states might wonder what that is. So once upon a time, all collegiate reaching through Baptist life was called BSU, Baptist Student Union. It became BCM a couple of decades ago in most southern states. It stayed BSU in Mississippi. It became BSM, Baptist Student Ministries in Texas. And it became Christian Challenge outside of the Southeast. So look, all of those titles, BSM, BSU, BCM, Christian Challenge, it is what we've been talking about, our cooperative on-campus collegiate reaching efforts as Southern Baptist. It's what we do to reach the university. So how's it going? Like, tell me what's happening in collegiate reaching right now in Texas.
Oh man. Well, one of the things we've got in Texas right now, and so I'm coming from it from a campus-based kind of BSM view, but we partner very cooperative with local churches. And so we've got some collegiate church plant things that are happening in some of our major universities in Texas. And Southern Baptist Texas Convention is kind of spearheading a lot of that. Mitch Tidwell's doing a great job. But we've got several local churches that have just really been intentional about not just connecting where there's a flagship campus, but also looking across the street like, hey, there's a community college. And then through specifically kind of my corner of that playground is BSM. And man, coming off COVID, we all kind of held our breath of like, what's the fall going to look like? Please be open campus. Please be open campus. And man, the Lord's just really shown up and met us. And with students availability, students being open to the gospel. I think kind of the stat that we've been looking at on average, we've seen about a student a day come to know Christ on average in Texas. So God's been really gracious. It's been fun to see what the Lord's been doing this semester.
That is so exciting. 2021, as we kind of put a bow at the end of the year, is the year that we've celebrated 100 years of cooperative on-campus collegiate reaching as Baptist, 100 years of BSU, BCM, BSM, Christian Challenge. And as we were talking last week, I just loved your perspective on some things. What do you think we've learned that our family, our tribe has learned in the past 100 years of trying to reach the campus?
Oh man. Well, I think one of the things we've learned over the past 100 years, if you get 6 Baptists in a room, there's 8 opinions. And so everybody's got their own view and their own lens and their core value of what they want to see happen. I think we've learned that cooperation is hard. It takes a healthy dose of humility, but it also takes this vision of what does it look like to reach campus. And I think actually that's what I'm celebrating most over the past 100 years. I think when we first began, it was we need to find a place for our Baptist students to gather. And we see a lot of that in a lot of our the established South. Everywhere there's a Baptist, on campus, there's a Baptist student center. And it was designed for we need a safe place for Baptist students to gather, so they can play ping pong, pool, whatever the game of the campus is. And I think over the past several decades, we've seen a transition from a safe place for Baptist students to gather to a launching pad where students are sent out. So we've moved from Youth Group 2.0 to the missionary outpost on the college campus. I think that's what I'm celebrating. A lot of our friends in the emerging regions, Northwest, Northeast, that never had property or buildings near campus, learned that a lot quicker than we did in the South. but I think it's been really interesting. And we've also kind of rallied to this idea of what does it take to reach the campus. And one of the things I love about our tribe is our creativity and willingness to say, all right, what does this work? How does this work? How do I do this? How does this come? And we've kind of moved from the campus minister, the director, from being like a campus chaplain. So that's part of what they get to do. But essentially they get to be the campus missionary, which I love. I think we're moving from being fueled by the number of Christian students to the number of law students. I have a conversation on a campus with one of the Wesley directors, and that's the Methodist version of the Baptist Student Ministry. And his district manager, I'm unfamiliar with the hierarchy, but essentially they said, hey, you've only got 6 students in your ministry. Maybe we need to consider shutting down this chapter of the Wesley because there's just not that many Methodist students on this campus. And I think one of the things that we have done as a group have looked up and said, man, there's only 6 students on this campus that love Jesus. Like, we need to double our efforts. And so it's one of the things I've really grown to celebrate about us, is our compassion and our visionary missionary kind of idea of the campus.
I love that. So what are some of the things happening in collegiate reaching today? Some of the trends or some things that you're seeing out on the horizon that you're really excited about? What's encouraging you right now? Oh,
man. So we have, probably 60 years ago, every single church asked the question, if there's a college campus, is there a BSU? Is there ministry? And I remember, I don't know if you've ever seen these, but I have in my office the 1952 Baptist Student Union manual. And it's produced by the Sunday school board. And it was the script on how you do, student executive council meetings, how you do all these. It was just like the playbook. You had your Holy Bible, and then you had your Baptist Student Union manual.
It was the cutter for the cookies.
That's right. And that's kind of how we did it everywhere. One of the things I've seen in, I guess, probably the past 10, 15 years, it's been super exciting as we've all looked and said, all right, what's the best way to reach the campus? And the realization of, like, our campus context looks different. Community college, 4-year university. And we've seen, because of that, we've seen some local churches that are better suited than a campus-based ministry to reach that. We've seen some collegiate churches that are better suited to reach a certain demographic on campus and certain campuses. And we've seen a campus-based model that has really thrived in certain areas. And with that, we've all looked at this and said, okay, if the method looks a little bit different, then that's good, but also, how does the funding look? Even just you and I talking and your history in BSM in Texas and in Georgia, across the South, we have these groups that are cooperative program funded. We have some groups that are, some salary comes from a cooperative program, but local budget comes from local churches. We have some states that are say, what's cooperative program? That'd be cool. And they're raising their salary and they're raising their ministry budget. And so what we've seen is kind of the breaking of the cookie cutter mold, which has been really, really beautiful to see. Not because this wasn't a good thing, but the realization of our culture and our campuses are so different. I think another thing I'm really excited about in what we're seeing happen is this realization of the college campus. For so long, we just kind of looked at this and said, all right, I'm just here to make sure you're okay until you get to adulthood. It's like the transit lounge in an airport. We're so glad you got to us from youth group. We're just going to make sure you're okay. It's like the waiting room until you start adulting. And make sure when you're adulting, you get plugged into a ministry, at your local church. And we've seen over probably the past 10 years, this idea of, no, this is the place where we see collegiate church planners, we see church planners, we see missionaries, we see people who want to come back, give a year or 2 years. And all of a sudden the realization of, and we've always kind of assumed it, but this idea of this is the generation, this is the place where we can launch people out on mission. This is the place where people can go, oh, I can give my life to this. This is a worthy calling. This is not something I do just part-timer until I finally get a job as a pastor. But this is a place I could be called to ministry, spend my life with the most strategic demographic on the planet. And so we're seeing people realize that this is a harvest field, one of the most strategic harvest fields in the country, in the globe.
Absolutely. So for all of those things out there that are encouraging and good and really kind of calling us into the, into the vineyard, into the field, to the work, what are some trends out there that are the other side of the coin? What are some trends that are happening that maybe are discouraging or concerning, or you think might need some attention?
Oh gosh. So every gift has a shadow, the shadowing of the gift. And one of the things that we've seen as we've diversified our models, diversified our funding, how everything's happened, there's always the assumption that, well, my way is the best way. It's my way. Our traditional campus-based cooperative, giving group, our BSU guys would say, well, we've always done it this way. This is the way to do it. And all these other ways are just, this new generation. But then our sometimes our collegiate church planning, our local church guys look at this and go, well, this campus-based thing is a broken model and it competes with the local church. And, there's grenades lobbed back and forth. I always find it interesting. Our way is the best way and everybody else is viewed with suspicion, and we look up, because in Baptist life, I think the other trend that's scaring me a little bit is that we're all siloed, and with Paul Worcester and NAM and some things that guys are happening, there's a lot more dialogue than there ever has been. But there was this idea of the local state convention does campus-based ministry this way. The local churches do whatever they want in this context this way. And then NAM does whatever they want to this way in collegiate church planning. And you look up and you've got all three of those models fighting over each other on a campus. On
campuses that are overwhelmingly not filled with Christians, not filled with kids who know Jesus.
Yeah. And so, and I think we're seeing the shift of, well, it's this fight over the same 5% Christian, and you look up and it's like Sunday morning, it's the most competitive hour of the week. And Thursday night, none of the bars are fighting. 95% of campus is lost, and the bar's like, hey, we're doing great. But the churches are the ones who are wrestling the campus-based ministries. The people of God are the ones that are stealing each other's sheep and calling it growth. And so I think one of the things, the silos of that is really concerning. It's not that way on every campus. It's not, it's not these people are always like this or these people are always like this. But it's the realization of, if we're motivated by the lost, then everybody's viewed as a partner in ministry instead of competition. But if we're motivated by how big I can get my group and who might, what my noses and numbers and budget, then everybody is competition and everybody's a foe instead of a friend. And so I think that's concerning. I also think, I don't know if this even answers the question, but one of the things that we have done, this is Generation Z is the first really global generation. They've all been raised on TikTok. They've all been raised on social media. And so whether their language is the same or different, what they're experiencing is all very, very similar. Which means that, the average, and I can't remember which book I read this in, but what means is the college student in India has more in common with the college student in the US than they do with their grandparents. There's this worldview and this pluralistic kind of way of seeing things that social media has bred into them, where they may speak the same language as their grandparents, but they relate better to the 20-year-old across the ocean. And so one of the things I think that moves for us is the realization of, man, we have got to figure out, I could learn a lot from the college minister in India, trying to figure out how to do this in a post-Hindu culture, as my friends in Seattle who are trying to do this in a pre-Christian culture. They probably have a lot more in common than someone in rural Texas has with someone in New York, because of just the nature of what they're doing. And so one of the things that I think is we need to look at and say, all right, what's our global strategy to reach these millions of college students who really function as their own demographic, their own affinity group. And so how do we
Yeah.
blur the lines internationally?
I know one of the things that you've done to try to break down those silos, or at least acknowledge they exist and begin a conversation, is you've been working with a movement, I believe it's called Every Campus. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Every Campus, I think we were talking about it last week a little bit. It's the first time I'm really learning about it. Just as a pastor sitting in Southwest Georgia, incredibly encouraged at the prospect of what Every Campus could mean and could do for us in our collegiate reaching efforts. So Clayton, just take a minute and talk about that movement and what you're doing.
Yeah. So I'm a little bit late to the movement. It started several years ago with a conversation between Crew and InterVarsity saying, what does it look like to reach every campus with the gospel? And then it began the conversation of, well, do we know where all the campuses are? Do we know who's on what campus? And realizing just the data we had in the US about college ministry in general was just really vague and really, really foggy. And so they began inviting all the campus ministry tribes, so to speak, to the table and saying, hey, let's collaborate. Let's hear what you guys are doing. Let's begin to say, what's the list of campuses? And so because of my role in Texas BSM, but also with Baptist Collegiate Network, which is a group that's formed by the Baptist Collegiate State Directors, and then my leadership with the Campus Multiplication Network, they kind of let me sit at the table as one of the Baptist guys. So Paul Wooster and I get to be a part of that. And the realization that several years is like, well, let's just see if we can get everybody to share their data. Just, hey, what campuses are you on? What does that list look like? And so we began to kind of pull all these things together and realize that, Crew, of all the ministry year success, we're 100 years at BCM, InterVarsity. Best we could tell, there was a gospel presence on about 48% of campuses. Now, the flip side of that is that about 50 to 52% of campuses have no known gospel presence. There's no one on that campus that we know of. Crew is, I think they're the largest, maybe InterVarsity, and they were like 15% of campuses they're on. Baptists were right behind them, like 14 or something like that. But all of us were just on the same campuses. We looked at, like you said earlier, you looked up in this major campus. It's like, well, there's 63 ministries on this campus. Well, like NCAA. So I'm in Texas. So Baylor plays Gonzaga. Okay, so it's like the battle of the Baptists versus the Jesuits. If we're just going to go that route. Baylor has something like 27 campus ministries on it. Every major campus ministry tribe is on that campus. Gonzaga has 3.
Wow.
Comparable size, but it's just we're all kind of clumped up. And so one of the things every campus said is, how do we get the data and figure this out? And so if you go to everycampus.com, you can search and you can know who's on that campus. And we're constantly having to update that data because it's like hitting a moving target. Every month something's changing. But the first step for every campus was like, all right, how do we get the data? All right, awesome. Now we know how many campuses in the US. Now what it would look like to put boots on the ground and prayer walk that campus. And so over the course of about 18 months, it finished in the pandemic, for the first time we know of in recorded history, all the campus ministry tribes kind of came together and said, we're going to prayer walk every campus in the US. So every campus in the US has been prayed over. Boots on the ground, someone there saying, God, would you start something here, or would you bless what you've already got here? And so now we're kind of in this next phase of saying, all right, what does it look like? Part of every campus is realizing that with all the ministry success of campus-based, BCM, Crew, InterVarsity, Chi Alpha, all these others, we're only on 50% of campuses, like only half of these campuses. And realization of there's probably a local church within walking distance of most of these campuses. And so what is the next leg, the anchor leg of this to get to every campus is, all right, how do we help local churches mobilize and be on campus and see a gospel presence? And so there's part of every campus team that's working with that. The part that I work with is more campus ministry based. And so I was in Georgia a couple of weeks ago, and we got together all the campus ministry tribe leaders in Georgia. And I think I told you this, it felt like a meeting of the mafia. It was really fun because like the leader of Chi Alpha came in and Crew was there, and InterVarsity and BCM was there. And this was the first time any of these guys had ever been in the room, guys and girls had ever been in the room with each other. And so you ask, our BCM, say, hey, do you know who leads stuff with Crew in Georgia? It's like, well, no, I don't know who that is. Well, now we do. And so to listen to them talk about where are you on, what are you seeing on community colleges, what's your campus? Now they know who to call when the BCM guys being a turd on campus, or Chi Alpha stealing leaders, whatever they can call up the state director or the regional director and say, hey, let's have a conversation. And one of the beautiful things that came out of that was that one of our guys from the Navigators, the Southeast region Navigator, and the Christian Medical and Dental Association, they were there, and they looked up and said, man, we were looking at being on this campus, but it looks like all you guys are already there. So maybe we need to look at this campus is where we need to go, because this is an underserved campus. Or, hey, I'm really looking at starting something here, but maybe our best effort is to talk to you guys first and see what you guys are doing. So how do we strengthen? And so one of the things we realized is that all of our regional people across the nation don't know who to call when they're trying to figure out what's Crew doing in the Northwest, or what's InterVarsity doing in Nebraska. Is there InterVarsity in Nebraska? And so one of the things that we're trying to do is, like, how do we get some of these translocal regional people together to begin to talk through strategy? Because I think that's us planning over each other, obviously is not working to getting to every campus. It's not effective. We've tried that for 50 years, and our best efforts, we're batting 500. We're not making it. And so there has to be something else to do that.
As someone who spent most of my time in collegiate reaching on underserved campuses, not the kind of campus that's on ESPN, right? But on places that, you've never heard of, right? I'm so encouraged by what every campus can mean about helping, not just in our Baptist world, but in our larger collegiate reaching, evangelical family of taking the love and the message of Jesus to campuses that need it, that are strategic for us to reach, but are totally off our radar. So Clayton, let me just say thanks for everything you're doing there in Texas on behalf of Baptist churches like me, with every campus on behalf of guys who are just passionate about reaching the university. Thanks so much. I'm going to share a link to every campus in the comments below on Facebook and in the description on YouTube channel, so everybody can go check out the demographics. And I'm hoping the people watching this video will go and find an underserved campus near them and begin to pray that God would send workers into the fields.
Chad, can I add one thing to that conversation? Because maybe someone's listening to this or watching this thinking, okay, well, how do I do that? What are next steps? Or someone who's already involved in collegiate ministry and they look up like, well, what do I do with that campus across town? So when I was on the local campus, we began planting ministries in some of these community colleges, and realized that there needs to be some training. There needs to be some, how do we help build this evangelistic momentum and disciples make disciples and start these new ministries. So several years ago, Paul Wooster and I developed a coaching and training cohort for those that are asking, how do I start new ministries? What does that look like? And it's like a 10-month training cohort. But what we've seen out of that is we've seen about 24 ministries planted over the past couple of years. And we've seen people in about 10 different countries kind of lean into the Campus Multiplication Network. So the Campus Multiplication Network, if you're looking for some training and some practical cohort kind of style, let's figure this out together, that'd be another great resource, as well as every campus, to kind of get the demographics, figure this out, and then these are some practical tools to make that work. So
I'll make sure to put those links in those places as well, so people can network with them. Clayton, just appreciate, man, everything you're doing. May your tribe increase. Keep up the strong work. We are praying for you and pulling for you. And thanks so much for your time today.
That's awesome. Thanks, Chad.